Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer covering W. Somerset Maugham's brilliantly crafted short story, The Verger. It's just an absolute masterpiece of situational irony. It really digs into this fascinating commentary on what society says we should value versus what actually creates success in the real world.
Now, before we get to the end of this incredible tale, I gotta ask you something. Do you think a total lack of basic education, like literal illiteracy, could somehow be the secret to amassing a massive 30,000-pound fortune? I mean, it sounds completely backward, right? Normally, society equates formal education directly with financial success and competence. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we unravel this narrative.
Moving right into Section 1, The Perfect Verger.
So, we're introduced to our main character, Albert Edward Foreman, the verger of St. Peter's, Neville Square. Now, for those of you keeping track, a verger is a church official who helps out with various duties, maintaining the church, preparing for services, that sort of thing. But you have to understand, for Foreman, this wasn't just some basic maintenance gig. It was a deeply solemn ecclesiastical role. I mean, the man had worked his way up from a page boy to a butler and finally to this highly respected position, which he executed with just absolute precision and dignity.
And the text really highlights his supreme dedication to the role. It notes that he kept his new gown, its folds as full and stiff as though it were made not of alpaca but of perennial bronze, and that he had been verger of this church for 16 years. He literally treats his alpaca gowns like a suit of bronze armor. The story describes him wearing his gown with complacence, this deep, almost supreme self-satisfaction. Without it, he actually felt kind of naked. He pressed and ironed it himself, wrapping the old ones up neatly in brown paper. He was literally the picture of irreproachable deportment.
All right, Section 2, an unfair dismissal.
Well, a sudden shift in management is about to completely disrupt Foreman's perfectly tailored world. We see this stark, really defining contrast here between the leadership styles at the church. Foreman deeply respected the old vicar. He was this aristocratic, leisurely clergyman of the old school who didn't fuss over education and just preached silvery sermons. But the new vicar? He's described as this red-faced, energetic guy in his early 40s who basically wanted to have his finger in every single pie. He brings in these rigid, fussy demands for literacy that violently clash with Foreman's traditional, highly effective ways.
And that brings us to the shocking, inciting incident. The new vicar and the two elderly church wardens call Foreman into the vestry. To their absolute astonishment, they've uncovered a secret. Foreman cannot read or write. Despite his 16 years of flawless, unimpeachable service, the vicar frames his illiteracy as a strict matter of prudence as well as a principle, supposedly terrified of some potential accident owing to Foreman's lamentable ignorance.
So they condescendingly offered to give him 3 months to learn. But Foreman, he stands his ground with incredible, unruffled dignity. He just tells them, "I'm very sorry, sir, I'm afraid it's no good. I'm too old a dog to learn new tricks." He firmly refuses to change his ways just to appease this fussy new vicar's arbitrary standards. And naturally, this leads directly to his unfortunate, yet highly principled, resignation.
Which brings us to Section 3, building a business empire.
Let's see how a moment of deep sorrow brilliantly pivots into a massive entrepreneurial opportunity. So, Foreman is walking the streets, deeply saddened, lips quivering as he realizes he's no longer the master of his own domain. Step 1, he just wants a gold flake cigarette to comfort himself. Step 2, he walks down a very long street and realizes, remarkably, there isn't a single shop selling them. He immediately notices this massive gap in the market. Step 3, pure personal initiative. He decides to open a little tobacco and sweets shop. And finally, Step 4, he just replicates this success flawlessly. Whenever he finds a long street without a tobacconist, boom, he opens one. Within 10 years, he expands to no less than 10 shops across London, walking around every Monday himself to collect the week's takings.
And what exactly are those takings? Over 30,000 pounds. He's amassed a colossal fortune. The guy's making money hand over fist. And keeping with his practical, cautious nature, he keeps his massive sum safely deposited right in the bank. Now, to put that into perspective, 30,000 pounds back then is a staggering amount of wealth, completely self-made by a man who was literally dismissed for ignorance.
Moving right along to Section 4, the ultimate irony.
We are now heading into the absolute climax of the story. The bank manager invites Mr. Foreman into his private office to discuss investing all this idle wealth. The manager warmly offers to handle everything. Foreman just needs to sign the investment transfers next time he comes in. But Foreman casually mentions he wouldn't actually know what he was signing because, well, he can't read or write. He only knows how to sign his own name. The text says the manager is so profoundly surprised that he literally jumps up from his chair, staring at his wealthiest client as though he were a prehistoric monster. I mean, the manager is absolutely stunned that someone could build this important business empire while being completely illiterate.
Which leads directly to this dramatic, completely disbelieving question from the stunned bank manager. Good God, man, what would you be now if you had been able to? It is the perfect setup. The manager assumes that with a formal education, Foreman would be a global magnate, a captain of industry, something utterly beyond imagination.
We just have to pause here for a second. This is the masterful punchline delivered by Foreman. It is absolutely the peak of the story's situational irony, and it lands perfectly, completely shattering the bank manager's entire worldview.
Foreman gives this little smile on his still aristocratic features and simply replies, "I'd be Verger of St. Peter's, Neville Square." It is perfectly deadpan and devastatingly ironic. The very thing that got him fired, the very lack of education the vicar despised, was the exact singular catalyst for his incredible wealth and independence.
Finally, Section 5, Themes and Social Critique.
Only after having a good laugh at that brilliant ending can we take a step back and appreciate the deeper insights ComIsem is sharing here. Looking at our learning objectives derived directly from the source material, we can break down a few key themes. First, irony and social critique. The story completely flips our conventional expectations about education and success upside down. Second, the theme of societal expectations, highlighting how the new vicar blindly valued formal education over actual demonstrated competence. Third, the role of personal initiative. Foreman didn't wallow in pity. He saw an unexpected opportunity on a long street and seized it. And finally, the impact of prejudice. Just look at how arbitrary rules almost ruined a dedicated man's livelihood, yet ultimately set him incredibly free.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core message we should take away from this explainer. Practical intelligence overcomes formal prejudice. Foreman's practical, street-smart intelligence and his sharp problem-solving skills completely outmaneuvered the formal, educated prejudice of both that fussy vicar and the stunned bank manager. He proved that formal literacy was absolutely not a mandatory prerequisite for his immense success, his character, or his unimpeachable dignity.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to ponder today. Are we letting arbitrary societal expectations blind us to true capability and potential? Do we judge people's worth by the certificates they hold rather than the initiative they show? It's a really powerful question that Somerset Maugham forces us to ask ourselves through the unforgettable character of Albert Edward Foreman. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning those expectations, and I'll catch you next time.